Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Shamananda, and I'm here with Mr. John Atkinson. Say hi, John.
How's it going, everyone? Super excited for this week's episode. We got some great feedback from our love and self-love episode last week. We actually had a question that came in that we're going to address first from last week. So we're going to dive right into that, if that's okay, Guru.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring it. Let's see what they had to say.
All right, cool. So they were asking, let me pull it up real quick, you guys. Last episode, if you missed it, definitely go back and check it out. It was all self-love, how we create our routine in the world we live in. And let me pull this up real quick. What's on that? Let's see. So the question was with mental, because we didn't really talk about is like people with mental illness and blockages on the mental side, how what was the question? How have things in their brain with mental illness that have their question in their brains? Okay, so with people with mental illness, is it harder for them to connect with themselves through self-love because because things can't come through? So I guess the question, let me simplify this, is like on the emotional body that we talked about last week, someone with mental illness, is it harder for them to connect with that side of themselves
With
through
the divine
self-love?
part, with the divine part of themselves, the unconditional part of themselves.
Mhm.
Yes, a lot of the time it is, and the reason is because with mental illness, the chemicals in the brain create a phenomenon where it constructs your reality. So, and it's very enrolling, this reality. So a lot of the time, in order for you to shift into a different reality of loving yourself or a completely different thought mechanism that will serve you better, if you don't have the strength of mind to be able to do it, to be able to start shifting, because healthy people, and I don't mean to say that people that have a mental illness are unhealthy. I just mean people who have more of a thought process that they have more, they have more availability, more options to be able to shift their way of thinking. Whereas people who have a mental illness, it's really hard to switch out of that thinking because they're really locked in and uh, they don't have the strength to be able to do it the way somebody that doesn't have a mental illness does. So even people that do not have a mental illness, although I feel like everyone has a little bit of something, even if it's not full blown, it's kind of on a scale. um, Even those people have a really hard time shifting depending on their circumstances and conditions. So, but if you're in a position where you have, let's say it's schizophrenia as an example, and schizophrenics often are very enrolled in the world that their consciousness is creating based upon what's happening in the brain chemically. And to tell them, or to even say, listen, you really don't have a celebrity living inside of your body. You don't have a dragon living in there that's killing people when you point at them. They don't die later that night or something like that. You can't say that to them a lot of the time if they're not invested in starting to shift their mindset, because a lot of schizophrenics want to keep that world. They believe that it's very real. So part of the reason why it's so hard is because sometimes, not all the time, of course, there's plenty of people that want to try to get out of that that type of world that they create, but a lot of the time they want to keep it. And unless somebody is really invested and enrolled in shifting their mindset, it's very, very difficult to see the world in a different way. So to go out and live as unconditional love takes a lot of discipline and a lot of change and growth, and you get to be open for that. But it's depending on what you have, it can be very, very difficult. Sometimes different types of mental illness will push you into uh, an arena of darkness that you can't get out of. And that can happen with all kinds of mental illness, such as bipolar is very common. You just get thrown into this place, and there's rage, and you don't see anything else. How do you explain to somebody whose cortisol is at 100 and say to them, okay, now be love? It's just, unless they've worked out beforehand, really focused on a lot of hard work with meditation, with mental exercises, with integrating self-love techniques and thoughts and ideas, and have made that their whole world, they're not going to have the strength once they go into an episode to reel it back. It's too powerful in the mind. Now with some of them, they might go on to medications and take those for an amount of time to at least learn the techniques and get into a habit, and strengthen those habits while they're able to maintain a steady mindset. And then sometimes they try to wean themselves off after that, after they've gained that strength, which is much more plausible than just trying to get into the mindset while you're constantly being thrown into these perceptions that are really dark and all-encompassing. So I would say, depending on where the person is at, or if they were just speaking theoretically about the world and about people with mental illness generally, I don't know if this person has something, or if they're talking about somebody they know, or if they're just speculating when it comes to people with mental illness. But I'd like to know specifically, if possible, what the situation is, because then I can be a little bit more useful in explaining what happens to somebody, when they're in that space. And I've worked with a lot of people with mental illness all the way across the board. So there is, and it really does depend on the personality every time. Because I work with somebody specifically who has bipolar and has no idea they have bipolar, and you can't tell them anything other than their world. They only want what their world has to say, and that's it. So the idea that in order to shift into unconditional love, you get to shift, you get to grow, you get to let go of old ideas, embrace new ones. But if you're that frozen and you won't go, and that does happen with mental illness, then it's a challenge. But it's very possible, as long as you have the courage to move forward in that way. Does that make sense?
I follow that, and it's great how you laid that landscape for everyone, because mental illness has gone, at higher levels than any time in history before, with everything going on, especially in this country when it comes to like homelessness and things of that nature. So I liked how you broke down on the individual side, and then I think people tuning in, it's like we all know someone, or might not, maybe know someone that is challenged with a mental illness, or their family's plagued by someone in their family having it. So just real quick before we move into this week's episode, touch on, if someone's living with someone with mental illness, or it's in their proximity, how important is it to up their game on the self-love side and creating that time daily to create that self-love in their life?
Well, that would be extremely important for sure. I'm sure all of us probably know somebody that's suffering from mental illness. It's an epidemic everywhere we look. And a lot of us have friends and family members that are definitely suffering. And sometimes they know that they have something, and sometimes they don't. And it can be very difficult to know how to support not only them, but yourself. So when you were talking about making sure that you are upping your own game when you're supporting somebody with a mental illness, it is very important, not only for yourself to protect yourself, but it's also really important for the people that you're working with, because um, you'll emanate that, you'll emanate that self-love and that self-work. And when it comes to whatever they're going to throw at you, you're going to have the patience, you're going to have the love to be able to deal with it. The best course of action and how to deal with the people that are suffering in your life with mental illness is being very calm and very loving. But don't be a doormat either, but at the same time be very understanding, and have the space of just peace, because if you do that, it's not going to trigger them. Because some mental illnesses are very dangerous, and some of them are very reactive, excuse me. And the reactive ones, a lot of the time, will go towards either a really deep illusion, or they'll go towards anger. And for the ones that go towards anger, if you stay really calm and you stay really reasonable, a lot of the time you can save a lot of heartache and a lot of time and a lot of arguments, because you can't argue with the mental illness. You're not arguing with the person. You're arguing with what they're fighting against. And so the best course of action would just to stay calm and to be loving, and don't put any emotion into your conversation with them if there's something going on. It's the best way to mitigate things very quickly. But as far as your own self-care and self-love, absolutely, because you're going to need it. If you're around someone or something that's dark and it's creating that kind of energy in your life, if you're not supplementing with your own self-care and self-love, you're going to find yourself moving out of balance, and you're going to find yourself getting sick too. So you get to remind yourself of who you are, meaning that you're love towards everything and everyone all of the time. And you get to do things that will fill your own well. Because if the wells outside of you are poisoned, you're not going to want to drink from those. You're going to get to drink from your own. Does that make sense?
Ooh, I like that. I like that analogy about the wells. And also, too, I think you highlighted a great point, Guru, is we're not fighting the person, we're fighting what they're going through. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to see that. It's been years, or maybe it's something new that someone's dealing with, or triggers. Sometimes when we see something in someone else, it triggers maybe something in our life as well. And it's just super hard. So thanks for mapping that out for everyone. And it segues into this week's episode, which you and I are both excited about, is the nervous system and how to regulate the nervous system. We're at a point in our earthy life where a lot of people are in a fight or flight mode. And how do we regulate that? How do we calm our nervous system? So with so much going on in the world today, what does someone do to regulate their nervous system? What would you say is some of the key points for someone tuning in on how to regulate the nervous system?
Okay. So you have in your lymphatic system, you have this, it's the fight or flight that you have. And it's a bit of a storage system. So what happens is everything that is maybe was trauma in the past, or was a big old warning sign, stay away from, danger, danger, the information is just going to be stored in there to protect you in the future of anything that might happen. And it's purely reactionary. It's not a intelligent system on its own. It has no brain. It's just a storage system, and then you react. And the idea is that you get to get the stuff out of the limbic system into the cerebral cortex, where you'll actually have a option to choose what emotion you want to have, and what choices you want to make as far as what you want to do about it. So, as an example, let's say you move your fight or flight from your limbic system to your cerebral cortex, instead of all of a sudden feeling an anxiety attack or a wash of fear or a flush of anger. Instead, you'll have the idea coming into your head. You'll say, do I want to be angry about this? As opposed to all of a sudden just feeling rage. So, but your limbic system in your brain is responsible for doing the fight or flight neurologically. So the best thing that you can do is start transferring over the information. And a lot of stuff can be stored in there. So I often give this example to my clients when we're talking about neurologically how to begin to start on a clean slate, is that with your limbic system, it has, if you're, let's say you're in a restaurant with a friend and you're wearing specific clothes. Let's say I'm wearing this and John is wearing what he's wearing, and the tablecloths are checkered red, and the waitresses or the servers, whoever they might be, are wearing a very specific uniform. There's flowers on the table, they're daisies, and it's daylight, and you're recognizing what everyone in the restaurant is wearing, what they smell like, what they look like, all the details, right? What food you ordered on the table. Let's say somebody right in front of you is shot and sprays blood all over you and your friend and dies right in front of you, and then you're looking at this going, oh my God. And the limbic system takes all of those details right down to the tablecloth, what you're wearing, what you ordered, everything. And it says danger, danger, danger. So from then on, moving forward, depending on how much information it gathered and stored, you're going to be afraid of red checkered tablecloths. You're going to be afraid of, the burger you ordered, or you're going to be afraid of ever wearing that outfit again, that kind of thing. Not, if it's clean enough after all the blood gets on it. You know what I mean? So, that's why the limbic system and draining it, learning how to drain it, is so important. And a lot of people do that with EMDR. So, and you can actually, I know that there's a few on YouTube. I don't know how effective they are, honestly, because I've never checked them out. I just heard people talk about it, where they could go onto YouTube and there'll be either a light bouncing back and forth, or you can also do it to yourself, or I do it in office all the time, but I use the knee tapping technique. I learned EMDR from a person that learned it from the person who invented it, if that makes any sense. That's a little confusing, I guess, but and he taught me through the knee tapping technique. And you get to go through that process of being in that space of whatever it is that triggered you, what you felt fear about, or the anxiety or the anger, or whatever it is that you're experiencing that you're hoping to flush out of your limbic system. And we do the knee tapping, close your eyes. And with the knee tapping on either knee, your eyes kind of automatically go back and forth because it's recognizing that there's movement going on down there. And then there is a very specific process verbally that you bring the person through, and you use certain trigger words and you use certain ideas while they're thinking of their trauma in order to start flushing it out of the limbic system, and then it'll move into the cerebral cortex. So in the days following, it's very common to have really vivid dreams, thoughts that you haven't had in a long time, but it's just part of the flushing out process. And then 3 to 5 days later, you feel a little bit different. Your anxiety goes down, and it's better. I do it more in a meditation, guided meditation style a little bit, so people go on a journey, and then I'll throw in a few keywords here and there to support in wrangling out those weeds of discomfort and anxiety and all of that. So just depending on what the client needs. So
I love that. If someone's tuning in, give a brief description. What does EMDR mean, and how is that impacted on someone's life?
This is embarrassing because I always forget the entire. It's eye movement, EM, and then the DR. I always forget. But it makes me want to look it up, so I'm going to do that right now. So you go ahead and talk while I look it up.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys, the nervous system is something that I'm super passionate in the past 2 years. A lot more people are looking at their nervous system. wondering how they could improve their life to live optimally. And the nervous system, once you know how to regulate it, your days get better, and it doesn't come down to your days off of where you're so overflooded with things going on in your life, a lot of emotions. We've talked about the four bodies all the time, and how that correlates to your nervous system and the fight or flight, and how you could deal with certain scenarios that happen throughout your day. So I think why we chose the nervous system today is it's a theme that could be your missing link to living optimally or a step in that right direction. Uh, so I'm super excited to ask more questions and share. Did you
Yeah,
find out the
I did. Thank you. And this is, I don't know why, but okay, so it's eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, which is totally logical because, it
and
does
that
both of those things.
explained yeah, and that's how you explained it. So what was the first one you said?
Eye movement. Yeah. Eye movement,
I
desensitization, and reprocessing.
Yeah, the
EMDR.
reprocessing part that goes to the cerebral cortex.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's exactly
Okay.
it.
Cool. I love that. That's so good, you guys. So that's EMDR. Super. I would say it's gotten more popular, right, Guru?
It has over the last few years. It's definitely more popular than it used to be, and there's a few different techniques and ways to do it, but definitely, I would try to go to someone if you can, just that has a great reputation for results before you try it on your own, so that you understand what you're supposed to do. But it's very common for anyone that's seen a lot of trauma, a lot of heavy trauma, to incorporate EMDR. Anyone that's been to war and has seen a lot of stuff, that's often one of the only treatments that works for them. So it's a great technique. It really does drain the limbic system, which is really important, and I would definitely give it a try.
I love that. Why do you think people struggle to regulate their nervous system in today's world?
Oh, I missed the first part because you could you say that again, please?
Out. Why do people struggle to regulate their nervous system in today's world?
Well, there's so many different reasons why. I would say that the world events alone are enough to cause a lot of uh, pain and suffering for people on so many different levels. Globally, personally, through their finances, family incidents, illness, all kinds of things happen because of there's just so much. I mean, people's nervous systems, not only that, but it's just the stress that we go through today as a human race is unreal, and we're very sensitive to energy too. So it's not, even if you don't know that you're sensitive to energy, you are an energetic being, whether you see it or not. It doesn't matter. It's still there. So you're going to be reactive to the world around you energetically, and the people and the collective consciousness as well. And so if you're not regulating that and paying attention to your spiritual body so that you guys can feel at peace and feel steady with everything that's going on, your nervous system is going to go all over the place. And you might be sitting there going, I don't even know my life seems fine. My job's okay. My home life's okay. There's nothing for me to be nervous about. Why do I feel this way? There could be so many reasons. One of them could be spiritually, for sure. And just noticing the collective consciousness and the ripples that are happening, or there might be something biologically going on that you're not aware of. But there's just, yeah, the nervous system is really linked into who you are as a spiritual being. And if you're not paying attention to what that part of you is, and you're not tuning in, and you're not cleansing that part of you and taking care of that and communicating with that part of you, then some serious problems happen, including with your neurological system. So
Hmm, it's so good. With the buildup of the nervous system, why do like some of your current clients or clients over time, what are some of the things that you see the most common things for your clients coming in with um, nervous system struggles?
I'm finding that it's harder for people to be able to handle life situations. They end up at the hospital more often than not, going through a nervous breakdown of some kind. The mental illness, like we were talking about before, if it's in their family at all, if it's in their bloodline, I feel like it's just so much more prevalent, so much more. It pops out so much more easily than I've ever seen it before. It's just more common. But I really do feel like it's because of where we're at in this world and society, with everything that's happening. And there's just so much. It's not, I mean, the struggles we have with inflation as well is playing a huge role on people, and they're really struggling with that. And, people who I've known for a long time that never had issues with money, they're cutting corners where they never had to. But they're making the same, if not more money, but everything has gone up so much that they need to cut back because all of the bigger companies still want to get paid the same. And so they're raising all their stuff, and they're not really caring how it's affecting people who have an income that isn't wealthy. They're just doing it anyway. No, we get to make the same amount of money, so we just got to raise stuff, But it's not okay, and it's causing a lot of neurological issues with people because they can't handle it. They can't work more. I know one woman that took on 2 full-time jobs to try to pay off her debt and to actually get ahead because it's so expensive, especially here in California. I mean, I know other places are very expensive as well, but California here I can speak from because I live here, and it's insane how much money you get to make in order just to survive. And that's enough to cause a lot of anxiety for people. So, I mean, the top areas of anxiety for people are often, if they have a place to live, if they have a roof over their head, if they have enough to eat, and how their family life is going, like their environment at home. So,
Yeah, the essentials that are met. With that being said, with the nervous system, do you think a lot of the times we're so disconnected from ourselves that that's why our nervous system, I always say, like, blown out, or a lot of times people can't connect with themselves because there's so much disconnect with oneself?
oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. It's frightening how disconnected people are from their energetic bodies, from their spiritual body, and that causes so many problems. And they're emotional too. I've seen a lot of people, especially recently, who are so completely disconnected from their emotional body that they don't even know what's going on back there. But they are having these huge reactions, and because of the disconnect, they're developing mental illness too because of that.
Mm.
They're developing OCD. They're developing, different types of uh, illnesses that will support in alleviating the anxiety because they don't have that connection. They don't know what's going on back there. That's doing push-ups back there and going, it's like there's a part of yourself that's really upset, and you're not even connected to it because you're logicking your way out of that situation. You're like, no, this is how I choose to feel. Everything's fine. But your emotional body gets to be honored. And if it's not, you will develop illnesses like OCD in order to start venting out the anxiety. And you're going to know when you have OCD that everything that you're doing is wrong. That it's like, I shouldn't be doing this. There's something wrong with this. But you won't be able to help yourself because you need to be able to vent out all of that anxiety and all of that fear. Otherwise, it gets trapped in there, and you'll literally lose your mind. So that's why these types of things pop up. Anyway, I went on a tangent and kind of went sideways. Sorry about that.
No, I like that because it shifts to what you've helped me out with my nervous system is highlighting, whatever I'm ignoring, or people tuning in, whatever we're ignoring in our life is like a dam being built up. So after a while, those deposits get overwhelmed, and all of a sudden the dam breaks, and that's why, like you stated earlier, people have breakdowns. People might disappear. They might be disconnected from family and friends. I know for myself, when I ignore things, I go quiet, and when people go quiet, that's concerning, and I think for myself, I'm good by myself, but also I get energetically charged by making impact with people on the daily and being in a social setting.
Yeah.
And I think over the last 2 years, what's been highlighted for me was working from home, and I think even though it's great and it's enjoyable, I think now people are realizing, like, "Hey, I need to get out and be social."
Yeah.
And so with that being said, what would you say, for a lot of people in terms of ignoring, how can they face that head on? What I mean by that is, if something comes up today in their life and they ignore it and they don't address it, what are the repercussions down the road for them in their journey?
Oh my gosh. The repercussions are awful. I mean, if you start stuffing everything that you're ignoring into a hole and never look at it again and bury it, it's going to come up eventually. It doesn't stay there. You can't ignore everything about yourself that you're afraid of and expect to live a life that's good. It's not possible. And for those of you out there that are doing it, my plea to you is to, have the courage to take a look at some of these things so that you can actually begin to have a life that's worth living, because it damages everything. It's we're meant as human beings to take a look at everything that we're creating, to have the courage to do it. And it takes guts, because all of us create things that we're scared of in our own lives, and then we bury it, and then we pretend like it doesn't exist. But it's a part of the journey in self-development to understand that, hey, I created it on my own. No one else did this for me. So why would I be so afraid of myself? I'm still alive, so there's a part of me that obviously wants to live. That part of me probably doesn't want to kill me either. So let's go in there and just at least take a look, and just let it go. So everything that you created, everything that you're afraid of, you created to begin with. So yeah, it can create, like we said, mental illness. It can create severe anxiety disorders. It can create physical illness as well. It can create cancer. It can create seizures. It can create all kinds of stuff that's really terrible in the body. Eventually, that kind of stress, if you shove it down long enough, it will kill you. So why not lengthen your life instead and just let it out and find a healthy way to do it? And there's a lot of different options out there to do so. If
Mhm.
you don't really have, if you don't have the money to go to see a shaman or a therapist or acupuncturist, or however you want to begin that journey, try journaling. Just try getting your thoughts out on paper, and so that you can look at it and reflect, and then slowly bring yourself into the places that scare you until you can see it and know that there's nothing to be afraid of. You absolutely get to conquer that part of yourself in order to liberate yourself. There's no other way. But it doesn't have to be frightening. You can just surrender to the process and not feel any pain, regardless of situation or circumstance, as long as you're just saying, you know what, I'm going to do it because I want to be free. So it doesn't have to be
Mhm.
terrifying, but depending on how you shoved it in there, it might hurt when you pull it out. So, and that was something that you would have done a while ago. It has
Uh-huh.
nothing to do with the process. So if you
Yeah.
would have been kind about it and put it in yourself in kindness, then you could have taken it out with kindness too, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's beautiful how you said how that process can be a cycle. And I know for myself, my journey, and you helping and assisting with my journey, and how we've talked in the last episodes of the four bodies, you guys. So the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical bodies. How does that relate to the nervous system in regards to the tangibility of someone working on that?
Okay, so so each of the bodies does relate to the nervous system and the neurological system in a different way. So obviously the physical component would be the, you know, what you've grown in your physical body to support your neurological system, so the cells and all of that, all the stuff in there. And then if we're going into the emotional, it would be the emotional component is what would be in the gap, what would be getting into the crevices of your neurological system, and it would be, it can either really support in healing yourself through the neurological system, or it can be a detriment if it's negative. So if you're pushing through a lot of peace and love through that mechanism, then you can heal yourself easily, and you could also probably heal other people depending on how talented you are. But if it's the opposite, then you can actually, that can actually cause a phenomenon in the body where you're actually creating mental illness. So just through that emotional outpouring. So the same with the mental, because the mental is about thoughts and the patterns of thoughts and how effective they are at keeping you on track for what you're trying to create in your life, and how much they're not. So the thoughts and the way you've constructed the way you think about your life. I am here. Time wall for complete my task. Oh, I have no idea. So Urim says, I am here from time wall for complete my task. Cool. I'm happy to hear that you're completing your task. Thank you for letting us know and sending you love. So then we move on to the mental. So we did the mental and emotional. So if we're moving on to the spiritual is who you are, and it is the battery power behind all of these things. So it is the one thing that if you're fueling your battery, if you're expanding your battery, if you're making it into something that's bigger, knowing how to use it more than anything. It's always going to be big, but it's actually learning how to use your battery to your advantage to grow all of those other parts of you. So the mental and emotional and the physical. There are stories about how people have learned how to master that part of themselves spiritually, where they simply just with the right kind of thinking are able to completely reconstruct their physical bodies, and they're completely able to reconstruct their mental and emotional, of course. Subscribed. Thank you, Urim. I love you. Thanks for subscribing. I can't wait to see you in the next one. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question. I'm not sure, but let me know if there's another question attached to it.
I love that. And I think it goes to show how important it is to have, we're talking about systems, you guys. So the nervous system, what is your own personal system, and we're here to add value to that, to give you guys some ideas on what you can adopt in your own life daily. And Guru, you've helped me map out my daily process or daily system. Each person's different, right? And it's up to us to decide what we need and what we don't need, and that changes over time as layers are being pulled back. I always love the word that you use is tangible. What's tangible, right? What's tangible right now for you guys tuning in to making a change in your nervous system? Maybe things have been triggered or high for you tuning to, hey, yeah, I want to take a closer look at that. I know for myself with the nervous system, Guru, mine was sleep for a long, long time. I had different sleep, schedules and things of that nature. And now I actually track my sleep because I feel, and I want to hear what you think as well, is tracking something can give you such great results in the fact of looking at how far you've grown, how much you're looking at, and in terms of metrics, something that you can really really measure is super important. So I started measuring my sleep, how much sleep I'm getting, how am I, how what in terms of restful sleep, all these different things, and that's really helped me on a different layer of the nervous system, the physical. And so, what is your thing about measuring what we can do in our daily life in regards to the nervous system?
Absolutely. So, what you're talking about here is awareness. And without awareness of what you're creating in your life, you're not actually going to be able to measure it and decide what you want to do with it. So, if you're wanting to improve a certain area of your life, whether it's your neurological system or something else, then the most important thing to do is develop awareness about what you're creating. So, if you're creating uh, if you're noticing anxiety, but you're not really aware of what it's linked to on the inside of you, then you're lacking awareness about what's going on. So it's imperative for you to start to understand where that's coming from so that you can start to solve the problem. But if you're ignoring it, you're lacking awareness and you don't want to know, then that's where the root of your problems are going to start. You get to start there, if that makes sense. So the more you understand about what you're creating neurologically, or anything else, the better chance you're going to have to for growth and to shift into the type of person that you want to be. So it's imperative to start tracking things in your life, whether it's sleep, whether it's what you're consuming with food or water, uh, whether it's, how often did you exercise and what kind of exercises did you do? If you're taking a class with somebody, how many details do you understand about the class? How do you know everyone's names? Do you know everyone's first and last name, or did you care enough to learn anyone's name? So there's a lot of different ways to look at what kind of data that you're collecting and what's going to be useful and what isn't. So, but the more details that you understand about something, the better you're going to be at it, without driving yourself crazy, of course. But it's but when it comes to understanding the self, there absolutely gets to be a curious awareness about why you do certain things, and a constant questioning of why am I upset about this, writing it down, looking into it, weeding it out, forgiving who you get to forgive, letting it go, and so on and so forth. Make sense?
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out for everyone, because that was like your secret sauce for helping me is like, John, write things down. What are you tracking? What does your daily practices in your spiritual body look like? What I know at a point in time, and still I struggle with it too. It just depends on sometimes the season and is like sugar, right? And we live in a time where sugar's in everything that we eat. But what I've come to conclusion is connecting your dots, knowing your journey. So about 3 years ago, I went completely sober. I am still living in sobriety of alcohol, but I didn't realize sugar is so sugar is found so much in alcohol, the sugar alcohol, and then that's redirected into that craving. So with you pointing that out is how can then I regulate those cravings. So we use a thing called channeling. You guys channel that energy and put it towards something else. And I want you to touch on that is how do you give tools to your clients to, one, like you said, be aware of what our actions and what we're observing in our life. Two, how do we rechannel that into a new habit, even though there could be self-judgment and it could be really hard to start a new habit with, whatever situation someone's going through.
So before I answer, I'd like to ask how you've learned how to rechannel some of your habits, because I know that you have successfully done so. And it would be really great to hear from you. And then I'll give you a few extra that I give to my clients, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll go back to the sugar one. So the sugar one, you guys, I label myself like the sweet tooth, and I love sweets, this and that. And Guru actually helped me is like, get rid of that label. Don't, call yourself the sugar tooth, and just redirect that energy in something that aligns with your higher self. And what does that mean? When you break that down, does this choice of eating this align with your higher self, your goals? And so when I started to give myself space and opportunity, because sometimes it's emotional, right? There's so many things in this world where people struggle with emotional eating. I was one of those people, and still at times are, depending on the season, what I'm going through. But it's giving that opportunity to yourself, the gift of, you know, self-judgment and space to be like, hey, does this fuel me? Does this fuel my four bodies? Whether it's the physical, is this choice going to help me, say, in the gym, or on the physical body, the mental side? Like I said, does it night sugar eating really impacted, my sleep? Is it emotional? Is it mental? Am I redirecting something that happened in my life to then go and eat certain things? So it really brought me awareness to rechannel into things that fire me up. So more, it was one, to learn about myself, two, double down on my spiritual practices in terms of, okay, if I'm still having these cravings that I used to have doing alcohol and drugs, what does that mean for me? Well, one, it hasn't been fully cleansed, right? And the life of purifying our four bodies is so important, and it's a process. I knew that. It's still a process. It's never a destination. It's always a journey, and things still come up from 6 8 years ago, 10 years ago, prior. And so with that being said, it's, what are we doing, or what was I doing to channel that? And that's through journaling. I was journaling out why I was feeling that way. Why was I dependent on certain foods? And also, too, if my therapy was going to grocery shopping, because I've been in the grocery industry for 10 plus years, that's kind of my therapy, to look at different items, is I have a choice. So now I pivot to fresh fruits and veggies and things of that nature, because I know that's going to fuel my future self. And so that was just one of the examples that I went through, and that could help anybody tuning in, is, giving yourself grace and giving yourself time. Because I remember, Guru, I was like, hey, I went backwards, and you're like, hey, like, that's fine. You have, like what we talked about, you have that awareness now moving forward, and give yourself grace, because you're trying something new. You're reprogramming your brain to make a different choice, and it might take time, and so I just love the process of purification, because it does take time. It's not an overnight thing. You're not going to wake up and be like, hey, I'm not going to make that decision, because you've made that decision maybe for years. And so giving that space, I would just recommend whoever's tuning in, giving yourself space to make that decision, slowing way down. Does this align? And asking yourself good questions. Does this align with my higher self?
Absolutely. And it's not just that, but if you're going into different habits that aren't serving you, there's a payout. There's a payout for your behavior that's bigger than the one that you're hoping to shift into. So let's say it's about going to the gym, and you keep coming up with excuses not to go. Well, then the excuses, you get to really look at why you're making those excuses, right? It's about, you're getting a payout for not going. What is that payout? And it's bigger than the idea of getting into a healthier body and expanding that part of yourself. So you get to be honest about what that is. So if the payout is, you know what, I feel tired. I would much rather play video games and get my dopamine fix. I would rather go to In and Out and get some burgers and fries than go work out today. There's, it might be about, maybe it's about self-care. Maybe you don't have enough time for yourself and you feel like going to the gym is more of a punishment than something that you're doing that's great for your inner child, if that's the case. It's hard to say, but there's always a payout. that's bigger if you're not doing a specific behavior that you're wanting to shift into in your conscious mind. There's something going on unconsciously that's saying, nope, this is more important and this is what I'm going to pick. So keep that in mind and try to find the payout. Try to find the reason why. What do you think there, John?
I I love that because I always like you would bring that up all the time, and I was like, dang, my payout's bigger if I stay the same, and that really hit me hard because people are not aware of they're picking their certain situation that the payout because it's known, right? We know we have comfort in that because I lived a certain way for so many years rather than thinking, wow, the payout is going to be a lot better if I make this pivot, if I commit to my commitments and show up for myself. And in return, it's showing the self excuse me, the self-love that I have for myself. So it's it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Get your spit down there. Swallow that spit. Well, I'm glad that you've been finding that that's been useful because I find that a lot of people find that useful. Just remembering sometimes it's elusive. People forget about the payout, but the payout is actually very important. Just to understand what your agenda is in every moment really does support with knowing where you stand. So, as an example, and we've talked a little bit about pillars before, John, but it bears repeating. It's like if you're going to take judgment out of your life completely, then you're going to need a pillar of where you stand because a lot of the time people use judgments to understand what is quote unquote good and what's bad. But good and bad don't really exist because people will place judgments and then they'll decide independently, well, that's bad. But is it, is it because those three guys standing beside you think it's actually a pretty good thing? So, and there is not one answer for everything. And if there is one answer for everything, it means it's absolute. So if you're the one person on the planet that knows everything and you exactly know precisely how the world works and how it's going, then you are that person that all of the world leaders are calling up every day 24/7 and asking questions to. You are that person who is an expert at everything that's going on in the world, and you wouldn't get very much sleep because the entire world would be demanding your attention. You would be the most famous person on the planet, and if that isn't you, chances are your belief system might not be perfect. And it's okay to accept that. It's okay to accept that there is a greater way to think of things. There is always a way to shift into a higher level of consciousness. The worst thing you can do is to get stubborn and stay stuck and say, no, this is it. This is the ultimate consciousness. I've arrived. Because as soon as you've done that, you've lost. So don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
guarantee
love how
you're not the person.
I love how you laid that out for people and in like the bite-sized ways of like people really can resonate with that. What I wanted to ask you this, why do people say something happen at work or in their daily life? Why do they wait like longer in the day? Because we've talked about this before, and I think it's a great topic, is blowing off that steam. So blowing off that steam, you guys, is like basically regulating your nervous system. Uh, why do people wait longer than rather than meet it head on, speak their truth? Maybe something has happened at work, someone said something to them and they haven't really, and they cling on to that, or trauma in the past, right? Why do we ignore that and we continue to blow off that steam,
Right.
aka regulating that nervous system?
Well, it's fear, and it's fear generated by our neurological system, and that has to do with uh, how our neurological system was developed and continues to operate as we're an adult. So, and I know I've said this one a lot, but I guess it bears repeating. Excuse me, it bears repeating because we are, this topic is really important. So, up until the age of 7, you're running at about 1,500 neurological synapses, right? So everything is lit up, and you feel like you can do anything without fear, because children don't really have, they get scared of things. Of course, they get scared of the ghost under their bed or in the closet, or something else going on. But as far as trying new things, a lot of the time, not for all kids, because some kids are already have a lot of fear depending on their environment that they're in, or maybe if they're not eating the right foods, or they're not getting enough exercise. There's a lot of different reasons why some certain kids have fear. But a lot of kids will just try whatever and not be afraid. And it's, yes, part of it is experience, but a part of it has to do with the way the neurological synapses are firing and how everything's an open freeway. But as after the age of 7, the neurological pathways cut down to half once you reach adulthood. They slowly decline. So you as a child, you're meant to learn how to create safety for yourself. And it's laid out right at the beginning of your life. And so when you get into adulthood, when it comes to things that feel like it's a new neurological pathway, I got to try this one thing new, I get to face this one fear I have, your neurological system says, no, don't do that. Don't do that. It's bad. It's dangerous. Because people seek comfort here, and they think that comfort is the only way to live. Now, don't get me wrong. I think being comfortable and feeling happy and being at peace is exactly where we get to be. But in order to do that, we get to examine all the reasons why we don't feel that way. And if we ignore those, we're never going to get anywhere. So part of the reason why the fear stems up is because your neurological pathway says, no, danger, danger, danger. But you get to recognize it for what it is. It's not actually dangerous. It's not going to hurt you. You get to get on the other side of that so that you can release the kraken, so to speak, and not be afraid of what's behind door number 2. And all of these mixed metaphors, I could probably add 5 more. But you just get to understand that it's your neurological pathways that are telling you just to not to look at things. And based upon experience of, hey, when I do that, I get hurt, and then your limbic system says don't do it, and it's a real mess. So I would say have the cognitive understanding that it's okay to look at these things, and the fear that you're feeling, it's just something that your neurological system put as a safety band so that you don't cross certain things. But it put, a wall is a wall is a wall, so it's going to protect you from things that aren't dangerous too, because you can't just put walls in certain places. It has to be all the way across. And it's some of the stuff that you get to kind of climb over the wall with are perfectly safe and fine. And facing some of these things, like if you have a problem at work with someone and it created anxiety for you because they hit a trigger of yours, and saying, no, I'm not going to look at that because I feel uncomfortable. Now, that is in one instance that you probably should look at it instead so that it doesn't come up anymore and it won't bother you anymore, as opposed to just avoiding it. Because if you continue to avoid it, it's going to create a lot of problems neurologically, physically, mentally, emotionally. And why live with that? Why not just release it? Why not just let it go instead, so it never is an issue ever again? And that's what freedom really is. It's liberation. But anyway.
I love that last. Freedom is liberation. And why do we hold on to so many things that we can let go of? And that's a choice to really hold on to those things. What would you say? I wanted to end on this question. What is one thing someone can do today after they've tuned in that they can do to regulate their nervous system in the next, few hours, or maybe later today when they have a little bit more time?
Well, so there's a whole ton of things that would actually be very easy to do. One of them is breath work, and getting into a space with that. Part of the reason is because breathing is one of the only physiological functions we actually have control over, because we don't have control over our sweating. or a lot of the time our blinking, eventually we're going to do it, our blood flow, stuff like that, although our minds can regulate some of it. But the breathing is something we really do have control over. And uh, connecting to spirit with breath is a really, really great thing, really very positive and powerful thing that you can do. So through breath work, some people just do it very simply, 2 breaths in, 1 breath out, such as, and if you do that for 5 minutes, obviously being careful and mindful of, if you feel like you're going to pass out or something like that, please don't hurt yourself. I would really appreciate that. Uh, because some people would anyway. And then just when you're done, after, when you feel like you're complete, just sitting there in the silence and the space of what you created, because it's going to create a space and a peace. And then neurologically requesting that everything calm down as well, and remembering that feeling so that you can try to plug that in later. Also, taking the time to bring everything down to a peaceful place, even if it's just once a day, does actually support the longevity of your neurological system. So, it keeps you calmer and more at peace and more clear headed. And there's a lot of health benefits. So please do so.
I love that. That's that's one of my favorites as well. I love ending on that. Let us know how that goes, you guys. Comment in the comments where you're tuning in from, play, and how that breath work has supported you. And we're just excited to, help you guys serve the collective. All we ask is in return is you share this with someone you love, or you share this with someone that you think really needs to hear our message, for themselves to hear that message. So thanks, Guru, for sharing space. Love you so much. I love these uh, episodes and discussions, and we continue on. So
Absolutely. I'm always grateful to talk to you, John, and anyone else. In the future, please hop on to our next Wednesday live. We do it every Wednesday. We would love to field all of your questions and support you with anything that might be going on in your life. We're here to help. We love you all, and we just want to see everyone as healthy and happy as they possibly can be. So if we can contribute to that in any way, please do let us know. We are there for you, and we love you.
all right,
Bye,
love you guys. Take
everyone.
care. Bye bye.